On today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, day 7 of training camp was by far the best day for CJ Stroud. However, the offensive line will now be without Scott Quessenberry as he has torn his ACL and MCL. How will that affect this offensive line?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Friday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Texans is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. I am your Texan football analyst, John Some Sports Guy Hickman. Of course, I'm joined by none other than your Texans beat reporter and Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Thank you to all of our new podcast listeners. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and comment to the podcast wherever you listen to your pods, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and on YouTube as well. Give us a follow on Twitter/X at Locked On Texans as well. Big day for CJ Stroud. We'll talk about that. And, of course, how Steven Nelson getting his money impacts his future with this franchise. John Mechie's impact. Finally had an opportunity to hear from John Mechie on Thursday. This was his first press conference during the entire training camp process. And so I'm sure you guys want to hear exactly what he had to say and how we're going to talk about how he can impact this offense. But Scott Quessenberry, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately will be out likely for the season after he tore his ACL and MCL in his left knee at training camp on Thursday. Scott Quessenberry went down during team drills and was carted off the field. As we know, once Justin Britt stepped away from this franchise, which is still up in the air as to why he did so, Scott Quessenberry stepped in and started in 16 of Houston's 17 games last year. And at this point in training camp, I think it was safe to say that Scott was this team's number one center. Now, Juice Scruggs, who the Houston Texans did trade up for, will be expected to start now in place of Scott Quessenberry. Cody, if you don't mind, before I pass it over to you, the Scott Quessenberry injury, first and foremost, to Scott, speedy recovery, man. Take your time to get back. Thank you for all that you've done for this franchise. The injury impacts this offensive line in a multitude of ways. Number one, I don't believe Juice Scruggs, and please, whenever you talk about it, let us know how you feel about it as you're there every day since rookie minicamps. I don't know if Juice Scruggs is ready as of right now to be this team's starting center. We got preseason next week, so it's a great opportunity for him to get ready. I think that he'll be playing in maybe more snaps due to Scott Quessenberry being out. They take on the New England Patriots next Thursday. But I'm not sure that young man is ready. And I think Scott Quessenberry was the perfect bridge center to help bring Juice along. They love Juice, honestly. A big reason why they traded up for him because they like what he could do at that center position and his versatility. Right, he's a guy that's played across the offensive line at the center and guard spot, I believe, but don't think he's ready. And I also believe with Scott Quessenberry going down and now the expectations of Juice Scruggs having to step up and now be this team's potential starter at the center position, how that will affect the productivity of Kenyon Green, a guy that I think needs so much of the vet leadership starting on an offensive line to help him get better from what we've seen throughout his rookie year and at times throughout camp so far. So I think that Juice Scruggs, a young player, isn't necessarily ready to start as of right now. I'm not sure that Kenyon Green can handle a rookie being this team's starting center. I could be completely wrong, guys. And for Juice, I would love to be wrong. I mean, I like his tape. I think that he was a guy, along with Tank Dell, there was no rush to get you as a starter. And so to bring them along was the process in mind, I believe. And I also look at with Juice now stepping up to be this team starter, Quessenberry going down, how much Houston, once the cut day happens in the NFL, how much will Houston look through their center market to bring in a vet to make sure that they have the right amount of depth? Also, if it's not Juice, does Micah Dater step up, who they also signed in the offseason as well? So those are my thoughts right now for Scott Quessenberry. And again, man, speedy recovery to Quessenberry, a guy that who I have a lot of respect for, stepped up when Justin Britt just completely walked away from this team. And though he had a bad season, had some brighter moments at times, you hate to hear this type of news, especially considering the expectations that were higher for this franchise this season. Now he won't be able to necessarily be a part of that on the field.
This was a big loss for the Houston Texans, man. Probably one of the worst losses that they could have experienced. John, a couple of days ago, you and I talked about how this offensive line has the potential to be top 10. With the loss of Scott Quessenberry, I don't think that's no longer going to happen. It's not going to be as bad as what we've seen over the last couple of seasons, but it's not going to be as good as what we expected. And I understand people might hear the loss of Scott and they might think to themselves, it's not that big of a deal where it is, because first and foremost, this guy has been taking first team reps at center ever since voluntary OTAs. And he has done a really good job. Going back to the 2022 campaign, I understand he had moments where you might be scratching your head thinking to yourself, what in the world is Quessenberry doing? But the one thing that I've been preaching about is I think Scott Quessenberry would have been able to take that step forward if you just gave him better coaching and better consistency overall, because he wasn't supposed to be the starter, as we all know, going back to last season. He was supposed to just be that rotational guy and help out when the situation arose. He was thrown into the position, as we all know, after Justin Britt left, and now, because he had that experience and because he now had a full training camp to go through and learn the tendencies of the guys that he was going to be lined up with that first team, I saw a better version of Scott Quessenberry throughout OTAs, mandatory minicamp, and through the first 7 days of training camp. Now, with him going down and Juice Scruggs coming in, John, you 100% correct. Juice Scruggs isn't ready. And I'm now worried about the interior offensive line more than anything. And I think, this injury actually took place a day after we came on this show and talked about concerns that we had. Majority of them came on the offensive side of the ball. And one thing you and I did not talk about was the starting five of that offensive line. Juice Scruggs isn't ready. On yesterday, doing 11-on-11 play, I can't remember if it was Desmond King or Jalen Petrie, but one of those defensive backs blitzed the A gap and literally was able to get a sack. I believe that was on CJ Stroud between Kenyon Green and Juice Scruggs. And I'm looking at that from a standpoint, if both of those guys could not pick up a defensive back, what you think is going to happen when you have a top 10 defensive line on the opposite side of that line of scrimmage?
Or linebacker blitzing through the A gap.
Or linebacker, like whatever. I mean, just take a look at your division alone with Shaquille Leonard. Like, Juice is a very promising prospect, but it's going to take him some time. And knowing that 2 of your 3 starters are basically rookies, because I'm still calling Kenyon Green a rookie in a sense, because last year was just that bad.
No, he is not.
He's not. He is not. His skill set is still on a rookie level, John.
No, he
and it's showing in training camp every single day. So, he's not classified as a rookie.
Still learning to be better, and that's why, I mean, to bring it back around, that's why with Scott Quessenberry, people can say whatever they want about Scott Quessenberry. Who would you trust right now?
Scott, and that's what I was getting to. Like, he's not classified as a rookie, but his skill set is still on a rookie level. It's just as bad as Juice Scruggs, and that is what's going to hurt this offensive line, because not only do you lose the talent, you also lose the experience that you need, especially knowing that 9 times out of 10 you're going to be going up. You're going to go into the season with a rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud, and one thing that everybody, including us, has been preaching is protecting your rookie quarterback. And if the offensive line, that starting 5, has taken a decline, that's going to hamper CJ Stroud's play and his development throughout his rookie campaign. I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Caserio and Coach D'Amico Ryans explore the market as of right now to see who they can bring in order to help that center position.
Yeah, right now you got Michael Dater, who the last time he played
he
football,
hasn't looked
guys
that
remember,
good either.
Right, he didn't play in 2022. In 2021, logged 546 snaps. You got Jimmy Marissi, who's still on this roster. Jared Patterson, another rookie, is the third string according to ESPN, but I wouldn't necessarily put a ranking on it right now. But what I'm getting at is Juice Scruggs, rookie. Patterson, rookie. Michael Dater, who is technically considered the backup guard as of right now. He hadn't played football for an entire year, and the last time he did back in 2021 wasn't necessarily stout. And Jimmy Morrissey, who also has his own struggles. So again, you look at it, Scott Quessenberry wasn't this, Scott Quessenberry wasn't that. But what he was going into this season was a vet with another year under this belt, right? And that's big considering the guy that Houston traded back for, they took in their first round last year, Keon Green, and not to, pick a fight, but I'm not classifying him as a rookie. If you're having those issues, you're just looking like Eric Flowers right now. Now I'm not giving you the rookie excuse. John Mechie, cool. But not Keon Green.
Well, like I said, his skill set. I understand he's not he's classified as a sophomore, but his skill set. The
skill set, if you looking like that, then you need to come on with it. But Houston may have a problem. And so we look at next Thursday, Juice Scruggs, you're going to get some burn at center. Michael Dater, I'm sure he's going to get some burn at center. Jared Patterson, I'm sure he's going to get some burn at center. I could see Nick Caserio folding his arms with that vest, looking down and figuring out, hey, ooh, you know what? I need to start looking around the league right now to see who can I bring in to help this center position, because it's looking kind of rough. August is here, and you know what that means, the official start of fantasy football drafting month. Get championship ready for your home league by trying out Best Ball on Underdog Fantasies. All you have to do is one live snake draft. No waivers, no trades. Underdog sets the best lineup every week. Try it out with Underdog's Best Ball Mania Tournament. The largest fantasy football contest of all time is back and bigger than ever, with $15 million of total prizes up for grabs, including an absurd $3 million going to the winner. Last year, the winner drafted their team in July, so don't wait around. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store and sign up with promo code Locked On to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code Locked On. Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers out there. Very great conversation right now surrounding Scott Quessenberry. And I love the energy Cody and I brought, because, guys, what I want you to see is and understand before we move on to John Mechie, a guy who's coming back from an injury. But what I want you guys to see and understand is this offensive line, we considered it to, at the end of the year, to be top 10 worthy, right? Mm-hmm. Largely due to Laramie Tunsil, Titus Howard, and Shaq Mason. But what Scott Quessenberry was to this franchise at that center position for this offensive line, yeah, he was a center, but he also was a cohesive piece, the piece that was going to make this offensive line kind of gel a little bit together, because he was and is the vet. And so now you look at Juice, rookie, like I said, Dater, out of football, and the other options, that cohesiveness and that chemistry will be tested. And I think that's why it's important for Nick Caserio and this coaching staff and front office staff to look at options maybe before cut day, honestly, Cody. But when we look at John Mechie, who's coming back from battling and beating leukemia, hadn't played football since 2021 when he got injured at Alabama.
Nearly 17 months.
Yeah, nearly 17 months. Mechie is a guy that, from what we've seen at training camp, the lower expectations, I think, is still valid. Cody was and I believe he championed that lower expectations, rightfully so. I'm not mad at it, and I still think they should be a little bit lower. But from what you've seen and from the lack of explosiveness from the wide receiving group so far, should those expectations be higher a little bit? Come on now, let's talk.
But for my own selfish reasons, just because I want to be right for a change, I want to say, no, let's keep the expectations lowered, because look, we only seen John Mechie in practice 6 out of the 7 days in training camp. We haven't seen John Mechie play against another team. We haven't seen John Mechie play live football. And I think that is going to really determine, matter of fact, preseason against the New England Patriots is going to be the true test to see whether or not John Mechie is going to have an opportunity and be ready to actually contribute to this organization like a lot of people are expecting. However, 7 days in the training camp, this young man has been a consistent playmaker. And when you look back at our early evaluations going into training camp of this wide receiving core, one of the things that bothered a lot of people was the lack of playmakers. And I am happy to report almost every single day, John Mechie has been a consistent playmaker, whether for Davis Mills, whether for CJ Stroud, whether for the few times he lined up alongside Case Keenum. He has been a consistent playmaker for this organization. And John, that leads me to my next point, because going back to Monday's practice, where this wide receiving core was terrible, I started looking at it from a standpoint of how much is riding on these rookie shoulders: John Mechie, Tank Dell, and Xavier Hutchinson. Because those three guys, if we are keeping it 100, they are the future of that position group. Now, I'm not about to sit here and call John Mechie the number one wide receiver or whatever the case might be, but that young man, from what I have been able to see as of right now, he is ready. And out of those rookies, surprisingly, he has been the one that's been the most consistent. And it doesn't matter if he's lining up in the slot or lining up on the outside, he is still going out there and making plays against a secondary going into the season. I would not be surprised if somebody wants to rank the Houston Texans secondary top 10 in the league. So I look at this from a standpoint, if he is doing this against Steven Nelson, a Derek Stingley Jr., a Shaq Griffin, or whoever the case might be, if he's doing that against these guys, John Mechie is 100% ready to be a consistent factor for the Houston Texans in 2023. And that's going to say a lot for this organization, because we are all expecting this offense to be a lot better. And in order for this offense to be better, you need better production from your wide receiving core. Now, the next part about John Mechie is the story. Yesterday, after training camp practice, we had an opportunity to speak to John Mechie, and for the very first time, the X's and O's of football went out the window, and it was just about him talking about his recovery.
Yeah, for sure. I guess an answer to tie into that is faith, right? Definitely, especially for my kind APO, acute promyelocytic leukemia, which is one of the most curable forms of cancer, but very tough at the beginning. So I was blessed and very grateful to have one of the most curable forms of cancer. As y'all see, like, I didn't lose my hair and a lot of stuff like that. So I was very grateful and very blessed for that. But at the very beginning of it, when you're diagnosed, is a very tough part. It's the most critical part. And I think all of that was just my faith, that you can only rely on your faith in those situations. And in situations when you're you're forced to be faced with your own mortality, you see what it is you really believe in and who it is you really believe in. So my faith in God is really what kept me comfortable and in a belief that this was all for a greater purpose and a bigger reason.
Thank you, Matt.
I'm not about to sit here and do the whole what does success look like for John Mechie. Once again, I want to keep expectations lower for this young man. However, John listeners and viewers, do not be surprised if you see John Mechie name in the running for comeback player of the year.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers. Cody, you said something that I forgot to mention. There is a lot of Johns in Houston right now around this Texan team. I can't do what John Mechie does, right? I mean, and John Mechie probably can't do what I could do. So, no, I'm just playing. John can do what everyone. I am happy to see that young man back on the field. We're looking at the best day for CJ Stroud. Right. And I think also him getting that connection, Nico Collins beating Derek Stingler, who, by the way, was in some good position. Nico is just one of those guys who we forget at times because it hasn't been utilized here in Houston. He is 6'3", 6'4". 6'3", 6'4", and ran a 4.5, 4.45 or something like that. So, the fastest, biggest, can jump the highest. Love to see that because I think Nico has kind of been getting lost in conversation due to him just kind of being out there. Not in a bad way. The expectations for Nico has been pretty high, and I don't think those expectations have been met because – just hasn't been talked about. Hasn't made any standout plays consistently. Hasn't had too many oohs and ahs. And so getting that from Nico was good for Thursday. But CJ, Cody, what was going on with CJ out there today? Because from what I was able to see, he was wheeling and dealing in accuracy and everything was on point.
Yes, sir. One of the things that I've been raving about CJ Stroud, whether a good day or a bad thing, has been his ball placement, his ability to put the ball right in the receiver's breadbasket. And that play during red zone drill, that play actually took place a couple plays before Scott Quessenberry went down, by the way. But that play was the perfect example of what CJ Stroud is going to mean for this organization, especially in the red zone, because John, over the last 2 seasons, we all looked at Nico Collins as a red zone threat. Like you mentioned, 6'3", 6'4", one of the bigger body receivers, somebody who can win those 50-50 balls, but he never really had the quarterback to put the ball perfectly in his radius. Now he does, and that's part of the reason why we saw that play take place on yesterday. However, CJ Stroud, man, was by far his best day of training camp practice. Between all of the 11-on-11 and red zones, I believe he went 6 for 9, 6 for 10, somewhere along those lines. But the accuracy was there. But the one thing that I noticed about CJ Stroud was his ability to get the ball out quicker. And that's very important because a couple of days ago, I talked about how it seemed like he was holding on to the ball too long. But it wasn't, oh, my God, I'm going to hold on to the ball because I'm being indecisive or anything like that. You can tell he was holding on to the ball a little bit longer because he was trying to figure out and learn that playbook and see what he has to do in order to be successful when these games become realistic. Yesterday was the perfect example of watching a young quarterback learn and develop in real time, because not only was he with him getting the ball out quicker, that means that he's starting to process this playbook a lot faster. And I just cannot wait to see what these joint practices against the Miami Dolphins or joint practices against the New Orleans Saints is going to be like, or whatever the case might be. That's going to be another learning period. And, one thing that he said last week when we had an opportunity to talk to him, he said he's spending late nights studying this playbook. And yesterday was the perfect example of somebody who is learning from those late night studies.
Let's transition over to the defensive side of the ball before we close out today's show. Steven Nelson got a pay raise. Previously was going to make about $4.5 million this season. Now that upgraded contract raises him to a total maximum compensation of $6.5 million. I think this is the first step into making sure that they sign an extension. He's earned it. By far the best cornerback so far during training camp, by far the best defensive player, by far the best player, maybe outside of Larry Tunsil and Titus Howard. But He's no less than 3 on top training camp player right now for the Houston Texans. And so I'm glad they got that deal done. Well deserved. Now I just want him to go out there, keep that same energy, ball out. And this team needs to work on an extension. And I also think, I'm jumping the gun, of course, that in next year's draft, they address the cornerback position, because I don't know how many more years Desmond King has left in him, especially on this roster. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Enjoy the weekend. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. And we'll see you guys Saturday show.
Yes, sir. And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.